Hello, this is Celeste of Astrology by Celeste. I'm an astrologer, a coach, a teacher, and an intuitive, and I'm here to give some astrology in action about a chart pattern, the Hammer of Thor. And what I'm going to do is relate this pattern to events in the news as above, so below, to help people understand how this astrology is working can help inform in your own life, or if you have clients, help you inform and help people understand if you see something like this coming into someone's chart. Okay, let's get going. And chart patterns are one of my favorite things. It's when planets in the sky make shapes. And most people know about, like, if you've been studying astrology, a grand trine where there are planets in each of the three signs of an element. And then it allows for this easy, smooth flow between the planets. Many people know the finger of God, which is called a yod chart pattern, where there's a planet at an apex and its quincunx 150 degrees, two planets, one on either side. And then those two planets at the bottom are sextile each other. And it's like you've been pointed at. When people have them in their charts, there's a big story about it. But this is one that I learned from one of my mentors, Ann Ortley, and it's called the Hammer of Thor. And it's also called the Fist of God. I am going to talk through some events in the news that related to this pattern when Mercury made it in the sky. The Celestial Insights podcast episodes that reflect back to it were Memento Mori, which means remember your mortality, and the Lords of Discipline. So this spanned over 2 different weeks. I think they're episode 192 and 193. I'm going to focus first on 193 because the story of 192 is really difficult. So what happens with the Hammer of Thor, and I'm going to show you in a minute, but you'll have a planet in the sky. I probably should show you what it looks like first. Okay. So you'll have a planet in the sky, and what it is sesquiquadrate two planets on either sides at the base, and those two planets square each other. So with the finger of God, the yod, you've got that sextile at the base, which can work together opportunistically in order to, that's more ease and flow and harmony at the base that can help you manage that quincunx, which is like an irritation. It's a bit of a stressful aspect. A finger of God is a difficult chart pattern to manage at times, but this is the fist. It is, think about what Thor did. He was a Viking who had these two goats that he would drive around with, and he had this hammer that he would whip and throw, and it would knock the top off of mountains. And one of the stories we're going to talk about is CBS News and what happened with the airing of the program, the CCOT prison in El Salvador is going to be one of the biggest stories. There's two sesquisquares, which is a hard aspect, but it's a minor aspect. It's not as easy to see. So a lot of times, unless you have your software set up, you may not notice them, but this could be a really important aspect. And when I see them in people's charts, this could be something to talk to someone about how they, with whatever planet is the handle, how they use it to knock the top off mountains, which could be knock the block off their friends, their lovers, their spouses, their children's heads, like maybe their boss's head. Maybe they got fired because they said something, and you can see something like this forming. Some people have them in their charts natally, but others, if you have a square in your chart, it will be formed while planets in the sky are transiting. The moon will be happening every month. This could be just if you have issues with management of emotions or your mouth, it can help you be aware. Oh, the moon's in this side, a hammer of Thor's coming. I better button my lip. Or maybe if you use it productively to manage knocking tasks out where you're working and you just get stuff done. This could be where you schedule things to know, oh, this is going to be when I'm really at my best of getting stuff done. Because squares are tension, they're activating. They can be used constructively. Some of the most successful people have a lot of squares in their charts. Chiron is considered an asteroid or a centaur. It's not a planet. Chiron is very important in our natal charts. It's called the wounded healer. And it really speaks to, as a child, the wounds we had that they never go away, but as we grow, we can use them productively. The Magi astrologers did a lot of research on Chiron. There's a book that they did about it. In your chart, they call it the asteroid of marriage. When you and your spouse have a Chiron connection, it means you're more likely to potentially marry or have a long-term relationship with that person. It could be something about how well the relationship goes. What we will talk about is it also can have to do with your work. When your Chiron's activated, it can be indicative of a work change or something. And then Jupiter is in Cancer. Now, both of these are retrograde, and see how they are square. This chart is pulled for the exact sesqui-square between Mercury and Chiron. It's sesqui-squared Jupiter a little later in the day on that day. I like how Bernadette Brady calls the sesqui-square frustration of events that lead to delayed achievement. Because this story that I'm going to tell you in a minute really speaks to that. And she talks about how squares are events that force you into a new type of action. So anyway, let's go back to the big stories about this. The Hammer of Thor perfected on December 17th. For the podcast, the Celestial Insights podcast drops every week. What I do with the podcast is I'll give you a theme that's a prediction of what is going to come up during the week. I've learned this through watching this happen again and again. The theme speaks to, it's my brain's, whatever my brain's doing to make the theme shows up in the news during the week, typically as one of the major stories. I give you 3 big things to look for, and I cross-post these on Instagram and Threads. The Hammer of Thor was one of the things during this week. And Mercury on a world point. The world points are 0 and 22.5 of cardinal signs, 15 degrees of fixed signs, and 7.5 degrees of mutable signs. If you have a planet on a world point or an angle, it can speak to something you are well known about. We often see very well-known people, but say someone had a moon at 22.5 degrees of Cancer, which is not just Mercury's on a world point, Chiron's on a world point, and Jupiter's on a world point in this formation. It's 77 and a little over a half degrees of the mutable sign of Sagittarius. Mercury is there. Mercury rules communications, thought processes, and transportation. Mercury is in the sign of its detriment in Sagittarius, as far away from home as it can be. When planets are in exile, they can act in extreme and unproductive ways to get what they want. Now, when a person has a planet in exile in their birth chart, it's not about pathologizing someone. They need to learn how to use the planet in a different way. Like if someone who has Mercury and Gemini, they like come out of the womb, depending on their chart, if it's conjunct Saturn or something, I mean, that they flavor it differently. But in general, they may have, let's say someone's born with Mercury and Gemini in their first house where Mercury has its joy. They come out the world talking, asking why, being curious, thinking a lot. They are here to communicate and connect. So they have a natural way to express the energy. Someone with Venus and Taurus may, from a very early age, just figure out how to give themselves pleasure, do art, different things, sing nicely. It's just a measure of expressing how you express the energy. Now, Mars is at home in Aries, and you could come out like a fighter wanting to stir up conflict with people from the get-go. Maybe you become a famous boxer. Maybe you're just a pain in the butt, constantly being combative. Or you use it when you need to. You're a protector, fireman or woman. You're someone who runs into burning buildings to save people, a soldier, whatever. People get in their feelings about detriment and exaltation, but it speaks to the way the planet expresses itself in the sign. And Mercury's in detriment in Sagittarius. It just is. Doesn't mean you're stupid, doesn't mean you're anything bad. It just speaks to the nature of the planet in the sign. Mercury wants to gather facts, and it's at home in Gemini, the opposite sign. And in Sagittarius, it thinks up, it has a philosophy. It can at times see its opinions as facts. Hopefully someone found that useful. When you watch my program, I've got a South Node in Virgo. It's not for everyone. Okay. But okay, so you see Chiron in Aries squaring Jupiter in Cancer. Jupiter is the benefactor. It's the planet of expansion. And Cancer is the sign of family. And it is exalted in Cancer, lifted up, has a special seat at the table. Jupiter rules wealth. This is going to get to the story. Mercury rules children as well. Chiron in Aries, the sign of the self, can be self-inflicted wounds. It can speak to doing something that hurts yourself impulsively, and you're like, oh my God, I wish I hadn't done that. Or if while you were being raised, if you have Chiron in Aries, maybe the wound is about you being able to express anger. Like if you express anger or independence or frustration in your home, you were punished for it maybe, or in a whatever way. That could be how it shows up in a person. Jupiter and Chiron are making three, and they've already done it twice now, three squares between, it started, I can't remember, around this summer or fall. And then on the day Chiron, the sun went into Capricorn, this is related to CBS, the second one. And then there's going to be another one. This is what I wrote about Hammer of Thor. Pressure points, and a journalist actually used that terminology. She used the term pressure point, which she was talking about the story we're going to talk about, which I found really interesting. Mercury on a world point forward is the apex. Conversations, paperwork, visas, travel, legal matters, making sudden visibility or urgency is an important thing. And you can read this. Surprising announcements, emotional reactions, family matters surfacing quickly. Clarity emerges. So what will happen? Let me go back. When you're looking at aspects, there's applying and then there's separating. and the energy is building as it's applying. This happened on Wednesday, December 17th. On that Sunday, Mercury was a few degrees. It was like at 3 degrees. And that was when Rob Reiner and his wife were killed by their son. I do have this chart. We'll look at it at the end if you want, but it's so disturbing. He held the Hammer of Thor, which was some kind of sharp object that he killed his parents with. He's a Mercury and Sagittarius type figure, a child. Mercury rules children who goes to excess. Sagittarius can be ruled by Jupiter, can be overindulgent in the sign of Sagittarius. And his family is Jupiter and Cancer. They were an exalted family. His Rob Reiner and his wife, Michelle, were well-known, beloved, successful, wealthy, all the things Jupiter and Cancer is. And Chiron and Aries, they were killed in a wounded in with a sharp object, Aries. Astrology is literal. And the episode was called Memento Mori, which means remember your mortality. And I knew there were going to be like stories of death and violence because Mars in Sagittarius was squaring Neptune on the day he killed them for like days. It was one thing after the other. Brown University, Bondi Beach. I mean, on and on and on. It was really difficult. So the whole week, this themes of remembering your mortality was seeping into the collective. But on this Wednesday, some of the stories that jumped in, I put a bunch of stories up in my stories on Instagram because there were so many that were like this Hammer of Thor knocking the top off of mountains. One of them was, it was announced that the Oscars are moving to YouTube, not till 2028 or 2029, but taking them off network TV. The networks are dying. And the decision by the Oscars is like they're holding that hammer. They made a decision in Sagittarius about something that's watched around the world, the Oscars. The ratings have just gone down and down, but it's like a death. How long will it be till football and basketball and all these sorts of things start leaving network TV? We shall see, but this is the first domino to fall. And so they knocked the top off of ABC, where it's been held for many, many years. And they make a lot of money from the advertisements. So it's a big deal that this happened. And it's like, kaboom. I learned the term malicious compliance this week. So Mercury also rules reporters. And there was a Vanity Fair article about the current administration. Christopher Whipple interviewed Susie Wiles a couple of times, and she was a Hammer of Thor, where she called the president a dry drunk. She said he acts like a dry drunk. The photographer really did justice to this. He does where you really see the person's face. He's done photos for many of the chiefs of staffs and presidents and things like that, where you really see them like stripped down to the bare and their souls shine through. This is Carolyn Levitt, and you can see all of her lip injection marks. He really showed, I'm not a fan of this administration. The Fourth Reich is not my cup of tea. If it's yours, I don't know what you're doing on my channel, but whatever. These photos really showed these people for who they really are, in my personal opinion. And this person online pointed out with Miller, who told this man, Christopher, the photographer, that you could be kind. And Christopher, the photographer, said, so could you. Because Stephen Miller is like the architect of misery if you read about, since he was in high school, he's been a nightmare. Just makes my skin crawl. Anyway, he has been likened to Joseph Goebbels from the 1930s. One of the pictures from the spread has this same kind of head tilt his inspiration had. So this was a really great, like the two crises, and Sagittarius is a double-bodied sign. So like Gemini, Virgo, Pisces. Anyway, you often see two, but Gemini, Sagittarius, and Pisces are mostly, we really identify with the double-bodied, the twins, and Pisces, the two fishes, but so is Sagittarius and Virgo, all the mutable signs. So anyway, that's enough of that. So the biggest story is about, which really it illustrates this Hammer of Thor, is about 60 Minutes. They had done a report on the Seacot prison in El Salvador. This was the Lords of Discipline episode that I did my podcast, and I talked in it about the Lords of Discipline and how it was the day the sun went into Capricorn, the day of the event. The Lords of Discipline is a book by Pat Conroy that talks about hazing and torture and mistreatment in the military school modeled after the Citadel. And then I said, I don't know why this is important, but I talked about, I get psychic hits, The Bridge, that TV show, which was a remake from a European show where it was two countries, detectives working on a murder because the person was found on a bridge in the US, in Mexico. 60 Minutes was broadcasting previews about the episode where they were going to be talking about this investigative reporting about the Seacot prison in El Salvador, which the Trump administration sent a bunch of men to with tattoos based on their tattoos. And it's known that it's like a horrific pit of hell with abuse that is unbelievable. Very Saturn and Pisces kind of energy. Saturn rules prisons. Saturn's lack, Pisces empathy, a total lack of empathy to be doing this. It achieved his goal. Less people aren't coming to the United States because now they know they could be sent to this torture prison, but they were advertising it. And then the new editor of CBS News, Barry Weiss, and we're going to look at her chart, she pulled the show 3 hours before airtime on Sunday, the day the sun went into Capricorn. This story will illustrate the astrology. I wouldn't be surprised if they started airing the previews on the 17th where Mercury sesquiquadrate first Chiron and then Jupiter. So giving some kind of energy to both of these. Jupiter was applying to Chiron. On Sunday, the day the sun went into Capricorn, Capricorn season began. The Lords of Discipline was the name of the podcast. CBS News has been a pillar of news, 60 Minutes, investigative journaling. Their reputation was very well regarded for many years. Walter Cronkite was a CBS reporter. Dan Rather, some of the pillars of reporting. And Barry Weiss pulled it. One of the journalists who worked on the story sent an internal memo about how it was a political move. They'd gone through all the checks, all the channels. She pulled it 3 hours before the broadcast. Well, anyway, Canada broadcast it. So the bridge with the two countries comes in from sending law enforcement working together from two different countries. Canada aired the segment and people taped it. And so everyone has been able to see the segment. The Barbara Streisand effect was evoked at this time because there was this big story about her not wanting her home shown. There was a picture online. And so she made a big deal out of it, saying that it was private property, but it was on a beach. And so billions of people have probably seen that picture now, or millions at least, rather than the 20 that would have seen it if she hadn't made a big deal out of it. The same thing happened. I highly recommend you could just Google 60 Minutes CCOT, December 21st, 2025 to see, you could find it. And people in Congress have made it available now at this time. Just in case you don't know, the sesquiquadrate looks like this. It's like a square with a little thingy at the bottom, and you can turn it on. Solar Flyer is the software I use these orbs to see in the natal chart, and these in transit or progressions. You could use my 15% code, 50% off, Celeste 15. If you don't have Solar Fire and want it, I also have on my YouTube channel a training about Solar Fire. Okay. Just before we get into the charts, if these are two tools for 2026, I'll put links in the description. The 2026 Lunar Planning Guide, it's going to help you stay on sync with the moon cycles, and the Weiss Guys digital calendar. Use my coupon code ABC2026 for a $10 discount. This puts all the transits on your calendar so you can see, oh, I want to go to vacation on this day. Oh, Mars is squared Saturn. Maybe I shouldn't because Mars is a gas, Saturn's a brake. Let me try to find when Venus and Jupiter are having a nice conversation instead for my vacation. Or if you're working on a project, oh, that's when Mars squares Saturn. That's my chart. Oh, I'm probably going to be finished with this hard work by then. You can be, yeah. Now, this guide is digital and fillable. Okay. So the Hammer of Thor, this was the day that Hammer of Thor showed up. And I called it battles. The Scorpio moon was opposing before this is exact. This is set in Washington, D.C. You could see Chiron is in Aries, is in the 12th house. So this is reporting for an overseas prison. The 12th house rules prison. See, you've got Saturn and Neptune there. It really is illustrative of the situation. Mars in Capricorn, the state Capricorn, Mars, punishment, action, how they're hurting people. You can see sesquiquadrate of Jupiter hadn't happened yet. But anyway, the word of the day was battle. I do words of the day for each of the days, and you could see them on my Instagram channel. And tension around control, resources, or emotional power. Yeah. Freedom follows release. So people who've been freed from this prison and sent to Venezuela, where they were from, were interviewed about the heinous abuses that they suffered in this prison. It's the stuff of nightmares. When I saw this prison before, a year or two before the president was in office, the current president, it was bone chilling. El Salvador's crime has reduced quite a bit. So there are people who support this stuff. Then a big thing that happened after the Hammer of Thor formed, you had this Hammer of Thor forming. You see it here. And a few days later, you had Mercury squaring the nodes. Mercury at 11 degrees of Sagittarius squaring the south node and the north node. Pisces is associated with prisons. The South Node in Virgo, health. We can think about control systems. One of the things that happened on this day, and Mercury rules transportation, there was a power outage, and this was December 20th in San Francisco. Like a third of the city was out of power, and these Waymo cars just stopped in their tracks, somewhere in intersections or wherever. So it showed us with Mercury in the sign of its exile and the sign of its detriment. The moon rules the people and Mars severs and separates. I see this as, well, let's see. Anyway, let me not get off track with that. But anyway, this and Mercury square, whenever a planet squares the nodes, it's like you come up, which way are you going to go? You should always go towards the North Node. Trust your intuition with Pisces. Let things be and flow. With Mercury square, the South Node in Virgo, let me control it. Let me be perfect. The South Node is a drain. The North Node's an amplifier. We're supposed to lean towards the North Node. Anyway, decisions was the word of the day. Karmic decision point that blends intuition, Pisces, with logic. Yes. And then the next day, Sunday, was the day the sun entered Capricorn, and then Barry Weiss pulled this story. She made an editorial decision, and she just started as the editor of CBS News in the fall. She started at CBS News a few months ago on the day of a full moon. I think it was October 6th, and it was announced that she was going to be the head of CBS News. The full moon was at 15 Taurus opposite her Saturn in Scorpio. So the sun's shining on her Saturn. So it's shining on her karmic Saturn. That's themes of failure. The president, the week before, there was a full moon on his Saturn, and this presidency is going down the tubes pretty fast. It's probably not the best time to take a job when there's a full moon on your Saturn, unless you have a really healthy relationship with Saturn, the planet of boundaries, limitations, karma, duty, responsibility, all of these kinds of things. Now, Sunday, the day of the Capricorn ingress, the sun moves from Sagittarius, 29 degrees to 0 degrees of Capricorn. And before it's at 29 Sagittarius, it squared Neptune at 29 Pisces. The word of the day was hangover, because I know people coast to coast and every continent got out of their minds on substances. With the last degree of a sign, there's this energy of wanting to express all the energy before it changes signs. Sagittarius is celebratory. It's like, yeah, you're having a good old time. You don't want the party to end. And squaring Neptune, drinking, whatever. So the word of the day was hangover. I have no idea what Barry Weiss did on Saturday night, but she cut the program 3 hours before it was supposed to air, after it went all through these checks. Now, she's an Aries. Aries is independent. One of the best traits of Aries, I have an Aries moon, is pioneering, meaning you do things your own way. It's the first sign of the zodiac. You just go for it and do it, like I do my podcast or whatever. But she used to work for she's a journalist. She used to work for the New York Times. She was an op-ed writer and the Wall Street Journal. And she started this thing called the Free Press on Substack. It's a success. And she has this podcast called Honestly. And honesty is an Aries trait. Aries tend to be blunt, honest. It's such a Aries word. So she's got Mercury in Aries too. So quick thinking, quick decisions. A shadow of Aries is being impulsive. And on the day that she did this, when Mercury squared the nodes, it was on when Mercury formed the Hammer of Thor, it was coming to her south node. The south node is a drain. When planets are coming to your south node, it's time to be aware of what's going on because you can send yourself down the drain. Because your impulses, the south node is what we come into this life with, and your impulses can be stirred up, and you do the shadows of the energy. The shadow of Sagittarius is not thinking it through and shooting from the hip. And Sagittarius was the hips, and Sagittarius is the arrow. So shooting from the hip, that's a Sagittarius thing. And that could give you problems. And look at Mercury's at 13 degrees of Sagittarius conjunct Uranus. Uranus reversals, sudden things, sudden upheaval. Uranus is the disruptor. So she made this last minute decision to pull this story, didn't think it all through. Canada still played it. She didn't, it was just, it's a calamity. She has knocked the top off of CBS's mountain. Now they're being called state TV. They've lost so much credibility. Oh, some people will never watch it again. Some people will just boycott. Their reputation is damaged. And look at this. The sun is on her Neptune. She wasn't really thinking clearly. She's got a sun squaring Neptune. That's like Vaseline on the mirror. You don't see yourself clearly. Aries can be very competitive. And sometimes that comes through the father relationship with a sun square Neptune. Sun and Saturn are father archetypes. And it's like, you don't see yourself clearly. You're trying to prove stuff. Sun on her Neptune, spotlighting the image of herself. This is a tower moment for her. She has had a tower moment with this. Look at the North Node amplifying her Black Moon Lilith energy. Uranus on her Chiron. Chiron is the work you do, and Uranus on it is damaged her reputation forever. And I'd really love to know what her exact degree of her moon in Capricorn, because that suggests she's got Mercury squaring her moon. I don't know how tight it is. This is a 12 p.m. chart because we don't know what time she's born. But this could be great. Like she can write, but I'm sure she's like, oh my God. She is in her Pluto square. She's got Pluto in Scorpio. People born from 1984 till 1995 have Pluto in Scorpio, and they are in their Pluto square, which is a big life transit. These are fixed signs. This is an intensity with Pluto, like trying to be powerful, trying to get stuff done. Like this is a big life transit when you're in your Pluto square. And there is this desire for depth, truth, intensity with Pluto and Scorpio. But coming up against Pluto in Aquarius, there's like the loss of control, the loss of the narrative that she'd been building about herself as this wonder kind who left the New York Times, started the free press. She also was one of the founders of University of something, Austin or something, university that may be online. I don't know, whatever. She's a wonder kind, and then gets skyrocketed to the top of CBS News on top of the world, and then screws it up royally with this. We'll see if she keeps her job. This is a tower moment. She's got to be feeling deeply burned shame for this failure, damaging CBS's reputation and all that. The word of the day on Monday was network. And I write these before the events happen. They're the pre-news. So this is where the moon met Pluto. The moon is the people. Pluto, people were talking about her all day, Monday. Pluto square, and about what? A tragedy, what she's done to CBS News. Yeah, all of this. And this is a noon chart, but the noon chart speaks to our life, even though it's not exact. I don't know. She could be a Cancer rising. She might be a Taurus rising, actually. I don't know what she is, but it looks like Saturn and Neptune at the midheaven. This was a lot of criticism, Saturn, and loss of image, Neptune was an experience she was having. And Saturn and Neptune are going to meet at 0 Aries, very near her sun. So she's going through, it's going to be a while before she's past this. Her Neptune square is coming too. Anyway, Pluto and Aquarius square Pluto and Scorpio. Really a good opportunity to come for a reading if you want to talk about your Pluto square or your Neptune square. If you're born around this time, she was born in 84. Yeah, these life transits are coming and they're big ones and we all have them and they deal with things. And it's not subtle. Collectively shifts within organizations. Aquarius rules organization, social networks. Everybody was talking about it, and systems may feel decisive or irreversible. What? Okay. Let me just talk a little bit about Nick Reiner. He's got Pluto and Scorpio too, where there is this intensity. We don't know his birth time either, but the Hammer of Thor, the murders happened before it perfected, but it was coming in and he has got, and it was at 7 Sagittarius. He's got his North Node there. The North Node is an amplifier. Apparently he went to a party at Conan O'Brien's house the night before, was acting crazy and out of control with his parents. Somebody was going to call the police, but they were stopped. This is a group. This North Node is associated with groups, people in Hollywood, across the country, outside of the country, with kids with drug and alcohol addiction or mental illness, saw this story and it chilled them to the bone. They're going to think about how they're going to be dealing with their kids who get violent differently when they're off their heads. Because if they called the police, Rob Reiner and his wife would probably still be alive right now, but they didn't. So somebody stopped the police from being called, and we have the situation. It's not blaming anyone. It's just talking about this covering up. We're seeing things come to light. The Epstein stuff is a whole nother thing, but this happened as Mars was approaching the square to Neptune, see, 29 degrees. Yeah, and the Mars squaring slippery motives, blurry truths, hidden dynamics may shift suddenly and reveal something unexpected. He was supposedly cleaned up. In fact, he'd done a movie with his father years ago, but lots of people are struggling staying sober with everything that's going on. So the energy may expose what some will hope to keep concealed. They wanted to conceal this family inner turmoil, and something really horrible happened that's impacting a lot of people, with the people at the party, the Conan O'Brien. There was, I forget who stopped them from calling the police, all of this kind of stuff going on. And 2 wonderful people aren't here. And this kid, he's not a kid, he's in his 30s, is in jail. I hope this was informative. It was long, but I'd like to get into the nitty gritty so this can help people. Yeah. So the day the CBS News segment aired was the day Jupiter in Cancer squared Chiron in Aries. The Jupiter protects Cancer, the homeland, Chiron in Aries, sending these people off to this prison. So the hammer, it was wielded, it was like sent out into the collective with Mercury and Sagittarius. It was let go. Probably the spots that they were advertising were let go right around the 17th, and it was in motion. It was frustration because they said they pulled it, but everybody saw it. Hopefully you understand the hammer thing. If you didn't get it, let me know. But it is, yeah, I should have made it clear. It's for protecting the homeland, Jupiter and Cancer, nationalism increases, and Chiron in Aries, the harming the horrors that people went through. Now they came to the United States illegally. So the people who support this kind of thing, sending these people to these horrible places, will support that because they walked here. They came in this country illegally. But anyway, it doesn't excuse cruel and unusual punishment, which the Lords of Discipline speaks to the Seacot prison. I hope this was helpful. Take good care. I'm at Astrology by Celeste. It's only $22 for the 2026 Lunar Planning Guide, and you can get the discount for the calendar as well. That's an invaluable tool you put on your computer, your phone. You got it everywhere. Take good care.